Good evening, everybody. This is Matthew Brenner coming to you on December 29th, 2016. Oh no! Fake news! Say it isn't so. The mainstream media. Pants on fire, liar, liar, extra, extra. If you can't blame it on fake news, blame it on Russia. After all, the propaganda machine is going ahead, full speed ahead. Yank that throttle as far as it'll go and pull that lever off. Here we go.
In the dead of night, Obama did it. He signed the bill to put free speech in America under a board of governors made up of the Department of Homeland Security and the Department of Defense, as well as the State Department. This is how the old Soviet Union was run. This is a dark day for the First Amendment, and the left and establishment Republicans are in ecstasy. Last week, as we approached the Christmas holiday weekend, I made a prediction that unfortunately wasn't very hard to make, that Obama would try to sign draconian legislation over the weekend. The reason I was able to predict that was this is what Obama does every Christmas holiday weekend. And it's what other presidents in the last few decades have done as well, though not with Obama's punctuality. So late on Friday night, President Obama signed the National Defense Authorization Act, the NDAA 2017. There wasn't anything in there about strengthening our borders. There wasn't anything in there about trying to get veterans more funding for all their ailments and not just throwing them out on the streets. No, ladies and gentlemen, there wasn't anything in there about the $1 trillion+ program, upwards of $1.5 billion per plane for the massively failed boondoggle of the F-35. That isn't even as good as an F-15 from 30 years ago, the Pentagon tells us. No, there wasn't anything in there about that. What there was a massive announcement of a new Ministry of Truth that dwarfs anything in the former Soviet Union, to be run by the Department of Defense and Homeland Security. Long before Hillary lost, long before dying MSM rolled out this call to license reporters and shut down blogs and news organizations like InfoWars, Homeland Security, bipartisanly, along with a string of multinational corporations and central banks, have been lobbying to bring in a system to control what can be printed and what can be broadcast and what can be transmitted here in the United States. True draconian police state censorship. But this is okay because they say they're legalizing it. Kind of like the CIA was legalized 3 years ago to engage in domestic propaganda. Now they're just getting the funding. So let's look deep inside some of the provisions of the bill that is now law, thanks to President Obama. You may recall that it was reported on in early June that a bill to implement the U.S. very own de facto Ministry of Truth had been quietly introduced into Congress. As with any legislation attempting to dodge the public spotlight, the Countering Foreign Propaganda and Disinformation Act of 2016 marks a further curtailment of press freedom and another avenue to stultify avenues of accurate information. Introduced by Congressman Adam Kinzinger and Ted Lieu, H.R. 5181 seeks a whole government approach, this is a quote, a whole government approach without the bureaucratic restrictions, to counter, quote, foreign disinformation and manipulation, which they define as Donald Trump, InfoWars, Matt Drudge, Breitbart. They openly say we're Russian agents. Isn't that hilarious? But it's not funny because they've actually now put this into law. In fact, who do you think they're talking about right here? Continued. Also called the Countering Information Warfare Act of 2016 in the Senate, or S2692, when introduced in March by Senator Rob Portman, the legislation represents a dramatic return to Cold War-era government propaganda battles.
So there you have it. They have introduced an Orwellian Ministry of Truth, and we are going to start to see the censorship of free speech and the abridgment of the First Amendment. I imagine there's eventually going to be a test case in the court system that will probably rise to the Supreme Court, and then we're going to find out whether or not they will be able to enforce this law and whether or not it will apply to real news that is labeled so-called fake news or propaganda. But I propose in the meantime that we fight back with everything we've got. If we come up with stories, that we cite sources and show where we're getting this information from, back it up as best we can, show our logic, show our reason. We need to make this story go viral, so share it. Subscribe to my channel, like this post, share your comments, and I'll be back with more news soon.